Stan, you guys were just talking about what's in your trousers. And I don't know if I ever told you guys about the story when I tried to smuggle alcohol into the Kentucky Derby. Did I ever tell you about that?
No, but this sounds fun.
This might not make the show.
I'd love to hear about it.
But I definitely, one time when I was shortly after college, because I don't know if you've ever been to the Kentucky Derby. It's like a fun thing everyone tries to do. You try to take booze into the Kentucky Derby so you don't have to pay $25 for mint juleps. And so forever, people have done that. Even when you're old enough to drink, people do it. And my friends had all taped like flasks up their short legs, like a little flask on the inside of their leg up their short legs. And I always wear jeans, even when it's hot out. Yeah. And so I had to find another place to hide a Ziploc bag full of bourbon. And so I put it in the front of my pants. In my pants.
Did it work?
It looked like I was wearing a diaper. Oh, no. I was walking through and a big security guard with a metal detector wand went over me around the outside. No noise, no noise. And then he just looked me in the eyes and he took the wand and he just poked me in the front of my pants. And the bag moved out of the way. And he was like, all right, open them up. Show me what you got. I pulled like a Ziploc bag, like a freezer Ziploc bag of bourbon out of my pants. And then I had to pay for $25 mint juleps.
At least you got to go to the Derby, though.
I got to go still, yeah. It wasn't like a kick-out situation. It was just
steal
like...
it.
Yeah,
well, they steal the bourbon so they can sell it for $25.
That is probably what they're doing.
Since we last recorded with Shane, I couldn't get him off the microphone, and he insisted on Sunday morning that we record another episode of What's That in Your Pocket?
Yeah. So he had reasons.
I guess, yeah. So last week we were promoting What's That in Your Pocket episode 9, and I guess now I'm promoting episode 10, which is all about the Switch 2, cruise control.
Right.
Are you guys going to get one?
I'm not sure. I haven't decided. People in my chat keep asking me.
I will buy one because I have children, and I suspect almost everybody who has children will get one of these. However, Shane had takes about the viability of children, specifically my children, using the Switch 2. He said it's too big.
What does he know?
It's too big for a little kid.
Just too quirky?
Yeah. I don't know. What does he know?
He doesn't know anything about parenting. That you can put anything of any size, of any weight, mass, or volume into a child's hand, and they'll figure out how to use it like an octopus.
He does know a lot about Switches, though.
That's true, though.
There's a lot of talk about milliamps on this episode and things like that.
Yeah, nits and
milliamps. I did do the thing where I listened to that show at different times, but a lot of times when I'm trying to go to sleep, I listen to a podcast.
Sure.
And I put that on, and I woke up in the middle of it, and Shane was having a fever dream about nits.
Yeah.
And also you guys were talking about me smoking and ignoring my children.
Yeah.
Which was interesting when I'm not even on the show.
That's right. And by the way, you never will be.
Yeah, exactly.
Devon can be on the show, but no Dave.
I understand.
Well, only if I buy a Switch.
Yeah, or I guess you play any other handheld gaming technology.
Does Balatro on my phone count?
It does.
It should.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that in your pocket? Just my smartphone running Balatro.
Mm-hmm.
Hello and welcome to episode 325 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from beautiful Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, the common most, it's Devon O'Donnell, aka Doomwake.
That's me. It's really hot now. It was like 85, like mid 80s past couple of days. It's getting summer weather over here. Not used to it.
You kind of look like you're wearing a polyester soccer jersey that happens to have Metallica written on it.
Yeah, that would be accurate.
Polyester, famously breathable fabric.
I mean, I wasn't wearing this when it was 85.
David, what are you wearing today?
I just drove back here from Cleveland.
Yeah.
Like maybe 2 hours ago. So I'm just wearing my normal uniform, a black shirt and a black baseball cap. I did not shower today.
Nice. Me neither.
I mean, and I didn't get a chance to get one in. So my hair is very matted down and such. But yeah, I have the road the stink of the road upon me. Let's say
Bugs in your teeth.
Yeah,
It's the
all
best
of that.
smell, honestly.
Did you know? So we stopped for snacks in Indiana. Did you know that there is a whole lot of Jack Link's beef jerky that is co-branded with Frito-Lay's products? Like several different versions. You can get a beef stick that is Frito's chili cheese flavor. You can get beef jerky bits that are Doritos flavor, like classic Doritos flavor. And what I want to know is, what is this world coming to? Your takes.
I didn't even know that. Did you buy any?
We did. My children loved it.
I think we were so obsessed with asking ourselves if we could, we forgot to ask ourselves if we should.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the Cool Ranch beef jerky was pretty good, though, I got to say.
I bet it was.
If you want your Loco, what is it? What are they
Dorito
called?
Loco Taco?
Yeah, Dorito Loco beef jerky. You can get it.
The Dorito Loco Taco is one of my go-tos at Taco Bell. I get it
As it should be.
I get a chalupa and a Dorito Loco Taco.
Didn't they have some stuff with Fritos for a while? Like burritos with Fritos?
Yeah.
Oh,
Those are good, too.
I missed that one. I'm sure that was good.
They'll put anything in a burrito, man.
Truly.
Next up, Funyuns.
You know, when we were growing up, if someone told us the future is Doritos tacos at Taco Bell and like Frito jerky, we would think that the future was awesome.
True.
And
Is it
too
though?
bad. Turns out, I want to go back.
Yeah.
We have to go back.
Each of those Frito-Lay integrations is just one of the many horsemen of the apocalypse.
I would trade it all for the ability to get another bottle of apple slice. Do you ever have orange slice?
I loved Slice
Yeah.
more than Sunkissed.
Did you know they had an apple flavor back in the 80s?
I did not
So
know
my
that.
friends and I, they used to get those glass bottles instead of like the plastic bottles, like the 20-ounce glass bottle.
Yeah.
And it had this like very thin layer of styrofoam on it. Do you know the kind of stuff I'm talking about, that they had instead of paper wrappers or plastic wrappers in like the 80s? You guys probably don't know about
That
this.
I don't remember.
No
now.
idea.
So what we used to do is the apple slice looked exactly like beer. If you shook it just a little bit, it had like a little head on top of it. So we'd be like 7 years old. We'd go get those at the gas station by my house and rip the label off and then hang out on the street corner looking like we were drinking malt liquor out of unlabeled bottles. Why? Because we thought it was cool.
Was it cool?
I turned out okay, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that anecdote about your childhood, your depraved childhood, David. Should we talk about what's happening on this week's show?
We should. What are we doing today, Stan?
All right. In no particular order. In fact, I'm reading a script. I don't know if this is going to be the actual order of the episode, but we'll find out in real time. We're going to wrap up Final Fantasy spoiler season once and for all with a very quick recap of our picks to click. As it turned out that Devon and I picked our top 3 favorite cards, but David failed to do so because apparently his favorite cards were also our favorite cards.
I will say, to be fair, one of my top 3 was one of yours, so I had to find something else. I didn't want to, encounter your territory or whatever.
Yeah, well, good cards are good cards, and I'm excited to discuss them in a little bit more detail. We also need to talk about a pretty important rules change that happened in the world of Magic that is going to affect Modern especially, and that's the rules update to Sagas, which, in my humble opinion, finally makes Urza Saga good and playable.
Finally, he says.
We needed it.
True.
And then, last but not least, or maybe first and not foremost,
Who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Who knows what this episode's going to look like? I want to talk to you, Devon, about Domain Zoo in Modern, and I guess you finally broke it.
Well, I didn't break it. I copied a list from somebody,
Well,
as I usually do.
you put the proof into the pudding, as they say.
Yeah, I put the cards in the sleeves.
That's honestly the hardest part sometimes.
It really is.
Yeah, I guess you have back-to-back top 8s from the weekend in paper and online.
Allegedly.
Which of those two has the best EV?
Well, we split top 8 of the RCQ for 200 credit each, so probably paper.
Okay, nice. But first, let's housekeep. If you'd like to support the show, you can join us at patreon.com/thedivedown or shop our merch store at thedivedown.com/store. We also have some wonderful sponsors, including Heavy Play, who who will give you 10% off your first order at heavyplay.com if you use promo code TheDiveDown2025. And of course, get 25% cash back after 3 months of a rental service from Mana Traders using promo code TheDiveDown, all one word. Play some Magic Online cards. See this new Urza Saga interaction for yourself, or try out some of those Final Fantasy cards that are reminding you of your childhood, spending hundreds of hours in front of a CRT screen, grinding Final Fantasy VI just to beat that final boss.
I wish I could relate.
You've never played any Final Fantasies? Is that what you told us a couple weeks ago?
Not a single one, yeah. Not by choice, just never really got into it.
Yeah. Do you like any turn-based RPGs?
It's not really my jam.
You're just not much of a video gamer, really. You're more of a card gamer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. A little Call of Duty here and there,
Well, who hasn't? Who hasn't had a little Call of Duty here and there? I mean, you know what? I kept saying we don't know what order we're going to do the episode. I'm thinking last one in, first one out. I want to hear about your tournaments. I want to hear about Zoo, because this is a deck that we saw quite a bit of in Indianapolis. It put up a fairly good win rate. I'd love to hear this journey of you seeing a deck online that piqued your interest, playing it in a Modern Challenge and then an RCQ, and doing pretty well at it with it in both tournaments.
Yeah, for sure. So as you mentioned, with Indianapolis that happened somewhat recently, and just kind of generally over the past couple of weeks and maybe a month or so, Zoo has been putting up a lot more results recently. And a lot of people seem to be split on sort of, what the best way to build it is. Some play Wild Nicodle, some play Fable the Mirror Breaker. There's a lot of different ways to build it. And I was, looking through some Zoo lists, on Friday, because I was trying to figure out what the heck to do on stream, because Final Fantasy isn't out yet. So it's kind of pointless to play standard, given that the format's hopefully going to shake up. And, there was some offerings on Arena, but nothing. There was some historic stuff, but I was don't want to do that. So I decided to play a Modern Challenge and looking through some Zoo lists. And when I was up, I stumbled across a list that I thought looked very, very interesting. Now, the person who initially played this list and where I got it from was from Manu Koka, who top eighted the challenge on June 3rd. Now, Manu Koka is a user who I found on Twitter not too long ago. And I want to say maybe 3 weeks ago, they went on this really insane tear where I think they won either back-to-back or 3 challenges in a row or something. Or maybe they top aided 4 or 5 in the same weekend with this Domain Zoo deck. Granted, they were playing a little bit of a different version, and I think this version they have here was more of an experimental one. But I just decided to try it out, and I gotta say it was pretty impressive. So I'm gonna go over some of the cards here and kind of maybe more of what you would expect from the traditional Zoo stuff. So, as a Zoo deck, you kind of start the deck with the biggest interaction here, which is Leyline of the Guild Pact and Sign of Draco, which, for those of you who don't know, Leyline of the Guild Pact makes all of your permanents colorless, opposite, all colors. And then Sign of Draco has, an ability that says creatures you control have vigilance if they're white, hexproof if they're blue, lifelink if they're black, first strike if they're red, trample if they're green. So if you have Leyline, your creatures are all 5 colors, so you get all 5 of those abilities on all of your creatures, which pretty absurd. Every creature you have having hexproof, first strike, lifelink it's hard to beat in a lot of spots. So that's kind of where you start the deck and sort of your building blocks from there. And part of the reason why you're playing Leyline and Scion, or why it's very good in the metagame right now, is Boros Energy, right? You're a Boros player. Every single time your Zoo opponent starts on Leyline, your heart sinks, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's a problem, and it kind of forces you to have static prison, or you're kind of boned. You need static. Generally speaking, I find if the Zoo opponent starts on Leyline, 9 out of 10 times they also have the Scion on too. Those two just kind of go hand in hand.
Yep.
So you really want to have static prison in your opener, basically, so that you can instantly answer that Leyline to, even if you're not slowing down the turn 2 Scion, because you can play it by having 5 colors of mana available. You're still shutting down all those keywords, which is critical.
Yeah.
Because it's the keywords that kill you, not the 4/4 flyer.
Yes. Yeah, so that's kind of like sort of one of the bigger reasons to play the Zoo deck right now is how well Leyline Scion lines up against specifically Boros Energy. And then from there, you have some supplemental threats like Territorial Kavu and Ragavan. Kavu almost always going to be a 4 of in these decks. Red and green, it's going to be a 5/5 if you have Domain. It is a little bit of graveyard hate. It's a little bit of filtering. Can discard Flage to put that into the graveyard. Can, if you already have a Flage, can put more cards in the graveyard to help you get back Flage. Ragavan, maybe a little bit of a point of contention. I've seen some lists play 4. I've seen some lists play 2. I don't think I've seen any play less than 2. But, Ragavan is like, it's good, but there are certainly matchups where you don't want it in, like Prowess, for example, because they have Lava Dart. Not the best against Boros because Ocelot Pride plus tokens block it pretty effectively. So that's kind of sort of rounding out your sort of like your generic threat base. Those are your probably your biggest threats, Scion, Kavu, and Ragavan. And then from there, you have some interaction, right? You have Leyland Binding and Lightning Bolt. Binding, pretty straightforward. If you're playing a Domain deck, this is just 1 mana kill anything. Lightning Bolt, sort of the same thing. Lightning Bolt is certainly a card that is, can sort of wax and wane depending on what matchup you're playing against. But because of how prevalent Boros is, you kind of need to play Lightning Bolts. Given you just need an answer to a turn 1 Ragavan or a turn 1 God of Souls when you're on the draw.
Do you think Lightning Bolt is just good right now, period, because of the popularity of both Boros and Prowess? Or is it still better in some decks than others?
It is certainly better when you're more aggressive, right? Because bolting upstairs certainly has some merit. So like in decks like Zoo, Prowess, Boros, I guess Boros doesn't even play Bolt anymore. It's a little bit more relevant than saying something like, Jeskai Control or something like that. The awkward part about Bolt against Prowess is most, if not all of the Prowess decks are still on mutagenic growth. So that's kind of a pretty easy way for them to counter the Lightning Bolt. It certainly is good against them, but you don't want to sort of rely on it as your like primary source of removal against specifically Prowess.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Totally.
So yeah, you have some interaction there with Bolt and Binding, and that's pretty much where the similarities stop. Right now, the rest of this deck, because you'll notice with Leyline Scion, Kavu, Ragavan, Bolt, Binding, that's not enough for a whole deck, right? We're missing some cards.
Yeah, so, like 30 of them.
Yeah, this is, not including lands. Come on.
Oh, okay.
This is where it gets kind of interesting. So most of the Zoo decks, as I was talking about earlier, they fill out the threat base with, most people are playing 4 copies of Flage. Some play 3, but most lists are playing 4. And that doesn't change for us. We're still playing 4 Flage. And then the rest of their threat base is like some combination of Fable the Mirror Breaker, Wild Nacatl, the Shilba Brawler. And then they fill out some other interaction with stuff like Stubborn Denial, or sometimes like a main deck consign or 2. I've seen, 1 or 2 consigns in main decks. Speaking of consigned to memory, Modern has sort of gotten to a point where consigned to memory is just kind of a good card to main deck. There's a ton of different triggers, like decks that have and sort of rely on triggered abilities. You think stuff like Solitude, Overlord of the Baelmerk, Flicker Wisp, Ajani, Guide of Souls, Chorus Steelcutter, Primeval Titan, Cascade. It's very difficult to find a matchup where Consign isn't good. Like it's not always going to be your best card. Sometimes it is, like against Black-White and the Cascade decks. It's unbelievable against it. And Eldrazi, of course. But it just kind of does enough against everybody that it's just kind of a fine main deck card,
The deck wasn't always playing main deck consign. Like, even though, yes, you can have like the scam synergy with Flage specifically, that was never quite enough.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, some lists play 1 or 2 consigns, but we are playing the full 4 copies. We're not messing around. Now, 4 consigns is maybe a bit of a statement, right? But as you mentioned, very good with Flage, right? For the people who don't know, you can play a Flage on 4 mana, then you resolve the damage trigger, and then before the Flage sacrifice trigger, you respond to that with Consign. The sacrifice trigger gets countered, and then you can resolve the Flage, right? Now, obviously, for consigned memory, a bit aggressive if we only had Flage. But that's where we get to our next threat. And if you're an Eldrazi gamer, you might be familiar with this card. It's called Null Drifter, which is a bit of a weird card to see in a zoo deck, I know. But hear me out, okay? So Null Drifter, for those of you who don't know, it is a 7-mana 4/4 flyer. It says when you cast this spell, draw 2 cards. It has flying and Annihilator 1, and you can evoke it for 2 and a blue. So if you have a Null Drifter and a Consigned Memory, same thing with Flage. You have 4 mana set up. You go Null Drifter, resolve the draw 2, and then with the evoke trigger on the stack, you can consign that trigger to keep the Null Drifter in play. So that is sort of the other payoff for playing the main deck consigns, where now we have, because we have 4 Flage and 4 Null Drifter, we have a lot more ways to sort of combo with Consigned Memory to keep a big threat in play, which is kind of nice. Next up, Consign wouldn't necessarily be enough to justify playing 4 Null Drifter and 4 Flage, right? Because you have 8 big cards and you draw too many of those and you only have 4 consigns, and you're kind of stretched a little bit on consign because sometimes you want to use it on their stuff. But that's why we're also playing 4 copies of Doorkeeper Thrall, which, for the folks at home who may not be familiar with this card, it is a 1/2 flash flying for 2 mana, 1 and a white. It says artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger, which means, going back to the Flage and the Null Drifter example, if you have turn 2 Doorkeeper, you go turn 3 Flage, right? You just played for 3 mana. When it comes into play, poof, nothing, no triggers. But that means you don't have to sacrifice it, even though you don't get the damage. It just comes into play
You
as a
just get
6/6.
it next time, to be clear. You get it when it attacks, but not when it comes in.
Yeah, you get the attack trigger, but not the ETB.
I had to step away for a minute. Stan is just sitting in shocked silence as Devon is talking about all these cards. The look on his face is almost anime-esque. He's got that shock.
He's figuring it out.
Yeah.
What is it? The Pikachu face? The shocked Pikachu? Yeah, that's what we got.
Yeah, shock Pikachu.
Well, what specifically impresses me is the synergy with Null Drifter, because Null Drifter isn't an ETB. Like the ETB on Null Drifter is that you have to sack it for the evoke cost. For Null Drifter, it's a cast trigger, so you're drawing those cards no matter what.
Yeah, which is the super annoying thing about Null Drifter in more than one way, but in this deck, we're really taking advantage of it.
Yep.
Devon, you're killing me here because I'm looking at this deck and I'm like, what's
nice, right?
I just need some Doorkeeper Thralls and some Territorial Kavus, and I'm cooking with gas.
I mean, when I went to build this deck, I'm like, I don't need much for it. Now, imagine, for example, right? We're going to go back to this scenario where you have turn 2 Doorkeeper Thrall, right? Imagine if you have this Flage or this Null Drifter paired with the Doorkeeper Thrall. Imagine, for example, if your third land of the game is an Arena of Glory.
Yeah. So you're just attacking with a hasty 4/4?
Yeah, hasty 4/4, Annihilator 1, or hasty Flage. And that's where kind of the nut draws really get involved.
Annihilator 1 is the real kick there, isn't it? Because it's like, get rid of a land.
Yep. I played one of the games against Amulet that I played at the RCQ. I went turn 2 Null Drifter, turn 3 hasted Arena Flage, or hasted Arena Null Drifter on the play, or turn 2 Doorkeeper, turn 3 Arena Null Drifter, and he only had a bounce land and a Spelunking in play because he had to pick up the bounce land to return. Oh god, yeah, good against Amulet.
Wow.
Oh boy.
So, all right, what other tricks are in this deck, Devon? Are we at the end of the tricks list? I guess we are at the end of the tricks. The tricks here. It's got a lot of tricks.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a super clean deck list. Basically, all 4 ofs except for the 2 Ragavans. Everything else is a 4 of that we talked about, and then 22 lands with 2 arenas. A very, very clean list, nothing too crazy. But yeah, this sort of like, this whole concept of playing this package of like Doorkeeper Flage with Null Drifter, Doorkeeper Consign with Null Drifter Flage introduces the sort of combo element to the zoo deck, which I can appreciate quite a bit, because Modern is a format where a lot of your opponents are doing something really and extremely powerful. And when you have this sort of, when you increase the ceiling of your nut draw with the zoo deck, and it's not just like cast a creature, Obviously, the regular zoo decks can do the Scion Leyline stuff, which you still can, but you even have, like, you're basically sort of taking the zoo deck and going over the top of the other fair decks. And I like that. That's pretty nice. We talked about the Arena of Glory. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the deck.
So wait, you said it goes over the top of the other fair decks. So it's good against energy. It's good against, like, what decks do you feel like good in the matchup against?
Basically everybody who's doing something fair.
Okay.
Right? Traditionally, Zoo has like a somewhat decent matchup against energy, and maybe Stan can attest to this. And it really depends on whether or not they have Leyline. That's the one card that matters in the matchup. If they have an unanswered Leyline with a Scion, it's like kind of lights out.
I would add that it also matters whether the Boros deck is playing Blood Moon.
True, that's a good point.
And I feel like Zoo gets better as Blood Moon stock
What's
goes
the
down.
Blood Moon Leyline of the Guild Pact interaction there?
If you have a basic land, it works. You have a basic land with all 5 types. If you don't have a basic land, they're all mountains.
Wow, that is fascinating. Yeah. Okay, good to know. Yeah, because I've played Zoo a little bit. I do have a question. Is this really still Zoo? Should we be calling this something else? Like,
you can call it Scam if you want.
Kind of is Scam. Like, is it mid-range Scam? Like, is that what we're doing here? Is it mid-range 2-card combos? Like, what really is this deck when you think about it that way?
It's hard to sort of clarify. I mean, you definitely do still have Zoo-esque draws where you don't have as many 1-drops, right? You're not playing Nicodle. You're only playing 2 Ragavans. So you're less about the aggressive nature of the Zoo deck. But to be honest with you, most of the quote unquote normal Zoo decks have been cutting Nicodle anyways.
Yeah, well,
like they're just terrible, playing,
but
yeah, they're playing a bunch of Fables and more interaction, and they're basically like sort of starting the curve at 2.
Yeah, when I was playing this in Portland, I was playing Psychic Frog as a 2-drop along with Kavu, which, of course, is wild to be like, oh, I got a black, blue, and a red, green.
Make it work.
Whatever. We make it work. Yeah, it is like a different thing. No tribal flames, though, so you don't have as much quote unquote reach. Correct. How do you feel about that?
That certainly, and that's a point that I was going to get to when we talk about the matchups and kind of the pros and cons. That is certainly something I noticed where you don't have as fast of a clock, right? You can go over the top of people, but your nut draws are sort of like almost a full turn slower because you can't sort of burn them out on turn 3 or turn 4 with those tribal, I guess turn 4 with the tribal flames. In that, like, you'll notice when we talk about my matchups, the decks that I've lost to were mostly, I shouldn't say mostly, but people who were trying to do some unfair stuff. Interesting. I think that is a big sacrifice. So we'll just do the matchups real quick. In the challenge, I played, it was 7-round Swiss and then cut the top 8. My Swiss matchups were Neoform. The decks that I beat were Neoform, 4-color Omnath, Merfolk, Amulet, Jeskai Control, and Affinity. And then I lost O2 to Boros. And then in the top 8, I got destroyed by Mill.
Look out.
It was not even close. My Mill opponent turn 3 killed me. And I don't just mean like turn 3 get me to 10 cards. They milled my entire library out on turn 3.
I mean, how? Yeah, because Tasha's Hideous End is not good against this deck.
Yeah.
They went, I fetched, they trapped me. They went I think they were on the play. They went turn 1 crab, turn 2 crab fetch, play 3rd crab, trap me, and then turn 3, I think they played another crab, played a fetch and a glimpse, and that was it. Something like that. It might have been double trap. I don't remember. I know I died on turn 3 though.
Wild.
Wild.
It's crazy. So that was the challenge, and in the RCQ, I beat Eldrazi, Affinity, Goryo's, Eldrazi Breach, and Amulet, losing to Boros 1-2, and then I got 2-0'd in the top 8 by Amulet. So Mill and Amulet, those are kind of like the matchups I was talking about where you want to be a little bit faster. I did lose to Boros twice, which is a little surprising. I can't remember a ton about the games. I know that I did not have a lot of ley lines, because that, as we talked about, that's kind of the card. And I did lose one of the games in the challenge to a Blood Moon that I was not really I wasn't playing around it. So,
yeah.
So you like this deck right now?
I do. There's a couple of, there's definitely some pros and cons. And I wanted to just kind of go over a couple takeaways that I learned from playing this version compared to ones that have Nikotl and Tribal Flames. Just kind of going over these real quick. It is a little slower, as we mentioned, because you're not playing Tribal Flames, you're not playing any of the 1-drops. Even the versions that aren't like the normal versions that aren't playing Nikotl, they still feel like they have the ability to close out games faster because, Dave, you mentioned they have Tribal Flames. Mm-hmm. So, and because you are a little bit slower and it's harder to race, you're relying a lot more on sideboard cards to like sort of make up for the slack that you get in game 1. But as most modern players know, if you show up without sufficient Amulet Hate cards or, whatever insert, combo deck X, you're just going to get destroyed. And that, I didn't have the appropriate Amulet cards and I got 2 out. It wasn't even close. So that's definitely one. I do think that it's better in long games. So essentially what I think you lack for speed, you make up for in longer games because you have more sort of top end, because Flage and Null Drifter give you a lot of equity in those longer games that gives you like better top decks overall. I think the Zoo decks, they're going to have bad top decks with ley lines and things like that. And then, yeah, definitely a little higher variance because it's a little bit more about setting up like A plus B with the, Doorkeeper or Consign plus 3-drop. You certainly have draws where you're like, oh, I drew too many of my 3-drops. I drew like double Null Drifter to Flage, or I drew double Consign at a Doorkeeper Thrall. So you have a little bit more higher variance there. And then, main deck and Consign, that card's either going to be a 10 or a 2 or a 3. When it's a 10, it's, very, very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Those are kind of my takeaways. And I do like this version. I think it has, some decent sort of upsides compared to the other Zoo decks. And I think I might play it again.
Do you think Zoo is having a moment in this metagame? Like, do you think the power of Leyline Scion is good enough to stop prowess and to like have fast starts against the combo decks that it's better than it's been in the last few months?
I would say so. Yeah, like you mentioned, Leyline Scion is in a really good spot right now. It kind of depends on how Final Fantasy shakes things up. We'll talk about what cards that, we sort of expect people to play or, the picks to click that we have. But I mean, if you're looking at the metagame now, except for sort of like I mentioned, the unfair decks like Boros Energy, Izzet Prowess, I think this version's probably a little bit better in the heads up Domain Zoo mirrors because, again, you're just a little bit bigger than them. Decks like Eldrazi Ram, any deck where Consign is good, like you're pre-boarded against them. So I think it does have some pretty good upsides compared to like the traditional ones. But even just the traditional Zoo decks, Modern does sort of seem like it's maybe going in the direction of becoming a little bit more fair compared to previous iterations of the Modern format. Would you guys agree with that?
I don't know.
You don't think so?
I think it's balanced. If we were to say,
Yes.
like, I think that the metagame is balanced. I think that there are a good number of decks that I would say, like, I'm a person who says combo decks are not fair by default. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't go in that category. And I don't mean that like crying badly about those decks. They're not built to be a value deck. They're built to do this one crazy trick, and they do it.
Yeah.
I do think there's a lot of that going around in Modern, and that's okay. I do think that there's a good spread of decks. I mean, if you look at what you played, for example, on the 2 tournaments you're talking about, there's at least 10 decks here, and so it's not like you're running into only energy or only prowess or something like that.
Yeah, I guess that's more so like my recent experience. Maybe I was going off of like, you'll notice the matchups that I played against. If you compared like technically unfair decks like Neoforum, Amulet, is Mill an unfair deck? I don't know, maybe. Eldrazi, probably not.
It depends how long you've been playing Magic for.
True.
To vibe check that one.
But yeah, not a ton of unfair decks. The amulets, and I did play against Amulet 3 times, but yeah, I don't know. I think that, like you mentioned, or like you were, to answer your question, I think Zoo is in a decent position. If the format goes maybe a little bit more towards like Belcher and Amulet, potentially with this new set card, Amulet got a new card. We'll have to see how that shakes up. But I mean, as long as the metagame stays like this, I do think Zoo is in a decent position.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was pretty fun last week in Indianapolis, honestly. So hearing that you say, oh, it's going to a more fair position right now, that usually means that it's pretty fun until somebody makes a mid-range deck that we all hate, or something.
Well, Yeah, mid-range is fair, right? I feel like we can almost make a whole episode out of this, but my opinion is like Modern is never going to be like a fair format the way that Standard and Pioneer are, just because of the nature of the format.
Sure.
But maybe right now we're in a slightly more fair side of the spectrum.
How about instead of fair, we use honest?
Yeah.
Is that a more appropriate term?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Boros is an honest deck.
truly.
It maybe has some unfair cards, but it's doing honest things.
What do we think are the dishonest decks right now?
Belcher.
Amulet.
Amulet.
I was going to say Titan.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's so pedestrian to be upset
Amulet's
with Titan.
been the most dishonest deck in Modern for 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. It's a pillar of the format. I do have a question about one card in this list that I don't think we talked about. Because I think if we continue down this journey of like, this is no longer Zoo, do we have to have Lightning Bolt in this deck? Should you play something else?
No.
Yeah,
you do?
So while you were away, Dave, I was asking, like, is Lightning Bolt just good right now?
Okay.
Whether or not more people should be playing Lightning Bolt. And Devon gave me a resounding maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to play it against. You need it for Boros.
Okay.
You can't like try to play that matchup without a 1-mana kill spell when you're going second.
Why can't you just play Fatal Push? Because you can't Kavu?
Because Fatal Push doesn't go to the face.
You'd have to mess around with the shock lands, I think.
Yeah.
There's maybe a way to do it. You'd have to change the mana base
But you
for
don't.
sure.
But
But you
I
could do
I
it.
guess my point is, we're not trying to go face with
No,
it.
you are
right?
correct. You could play a different kill
It's a
spell.
removal
Maybe even
spell.
like like pending or something you could look at.
Yep. Yeah.
Something like that. Something to think about for sure.
Because I'm just looking at this going, Lightning Bolt doesn't kill Guide of Souls forever. You know what I mean? Like, it would be better to have something that did that. But anyway, you guys already talked about it a little bit. Well, I do like Zoo. I also like that I have most of the cards in this deck. And I've played it recently enough. You know,
that's what I'm looking at too. Why did you end up on Prowess instead of Zoo?
I just have so many more reps with Prowess, generally speaking, than I do with Zoo. Learning how to fetch properly with Zoo is always a thing that takes a little bit of practice and thought for me, but I've always liked Zoo as like one of my like third deck to have around that I can just build, and it's just good creatures, so now this is a more tricky version of that than Nicodle. And honestly, I started playing Zoo in like 2018 when it had Tarmogoyf and Loam Lion in it and stuff like that, like
Step links.
Yeah, step links, all that kind of stuff. But this is a totally different type of thing than that.
I mean, it's Scam. You played a lot of Scam.
I did. It's funny that it's Scam, but it is kind of Scam. Yeah. Evoke.
The arc of history just always bends towards Scam,
It bends towards breaking Evoke is what it does.
I got an Evoke card.
Yeah.
If last thing to say, if we're gonna do an SBH, I'll give this one a sleeve. Mostly because I have it sleeved up on my desk right now.
Perfect.
But,
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks for all that, Devon. Before we move on to our conversation about Urza Saga, we want to talk about another sponsor. It's one of our old friends. They're back for more. It's Magic Mind, who reached out to the Dive Down again to try some of their newest mental performance shots. And I personally, as well as Shane, were thrilled to do that since we both loved our previous experience with Magic Mind. And they've been a sponsor of the podcast for a while. And I was just really curious, genuinely, to see what their new formulas were like. In fact, I think one of these formulas, David, is going to be right up your alley. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll get more into that in just a second. So the original Magic Mind formula, which I was able to compare against their new ones, it's a straightforward matcha-based caffeine shot. It's combined with other natural ingredients that are clinically proven to improve focus and stress management, and ultimately designed to sustain lasting energy and just your overall mental and physical vitality. But the new Magic Mind shots, they're called Max, which features an extra dose of caffeine, as well as Free, which is the caffeine-free option. And that's the one, David, I think you might like.
I would definitely try it. I'll be honest. I have been reluctant to try it up until now because I don't like caffeine, but a caffeine-free version sounds great.
Yeah. And the Magic Mind team invited us to try all three formulas for 6 days, 2 days each, and just see which one kind of worked best for us. So that's what I've been doing, and I just want to walk you through my experience really quickly. Okay. First couple of days, I started with the original blend just to get a baseline of how it fits into my morning routine and my overall daily ritual. And this is the formula that I initially fell in love with because it was just a very tasty and easy way to give my day a quick start while I'm juggling kids or getting ready for work or all of the above. Then on days 3 and 4, I went for the max version, which is the extra caffeine version. And I can certainly feel a difference there. The extra caffeine, it's about, I think, double the amount of caffeine, and it's undeniable. Where the original felt like I was my usual happy-go-lucky self, the max made me very alert and extra energized. And it was just kind of allowing me to get through everything, I would say, a little faster. And not in the jittery way that I get when I have too much coffee in a short period of time. But that extra kick was definitely undeniable. And on mornings where maybe I didn't get enough sleep because my kids kept me up, something that they still do, unfortunately, the max formula was actually just like a total lifesaver to kind of get me up and going on days that otherwise it would be a lot harder for me to be present and focused. And then finally on days 5 and 6, I tried the free formula, which was honestly the most surprising of the bunch. Even though it is caffeine free, I felt like the other ingredients still managed to perk me up and just help me ease into the day. And I found that I was still maybe craving some coffee later in the day, which wasn't always the case with the original and basically never the case with Max. But for people like you, Dave, who are maybe caffeine sensitive, I felt like the free version was a nice way of getting a lot of the perks of Magic Mind without some of the other side effects that you might get from coffee or caffeinated drinks in generally. Where free really surprised me was when I needed a boost in the second half of the day. Okay. So I brought one with me to an RCQ. It was a Magic tournament a few weeks ago. And after like 3 or 4 rounds, when I could feel my mental and physical energy start to slip from doing all of the exercises that goes into a Magic tournament, I had a free, and it just got me right back into the game, feeling sharp into the evening without the risk of drinking caffeine too late and feeling too wired when I'm ready to start winding down. In fact, can I tell you guys something? I drank a Magic Mind free like a couple hours ago because I was feeling a little tired in the evening, but I wanted to get some energy back for the podcast. And I feel great. Heck, I think I sound great.
You seem locked in, Stan. You're locked in right now. I can tell.
All right. So all that said, the best one for me was still the original formula. It's just the one that I felt like I could fit into pretty much any day, whether or not I needed some extra caffeine later because of a particular day might be taking an extra toll on me. But honestly, they all had their own unique benefits, and I can still see myself keeping all 3 on hand just so I can mix and match on days when I need an extra kick from a max or in afternoons where I just need a light boost from a free. And for you, the listener, if any of this sounds appealing to you, but you're not sure which one fits your vibe, Magic Mind has this quiz on their website that allows you to figure that out for yourself. Or if you're like me and you want to mix and match, you can try all 3 and which one works best for your body. I don't think there's any bad times with Magic Mind, but maybe they can all fit in your lifestyle in different ways. And right now, they're offering the biggest offer ever to Dive Down listeners. With promo code DIVE60, you can get 60% off your first subscription from magicmind.com. You can just also go to our direct link at magicmind.com/divemf. That's magicmind.com/divemf. Or use promo code DIVE60, get 60% off of a monthly subscription of Magic Mind. You're going to love the way you feel. I know I do. Urza Saga.
The saga of Urza's Saga.
Mm-hmm.
It's finally good. We've been waiting for this card to see some play, and here it is.
This is the silliest thing ever.
You know, it almost feels like, we can get into this, it almost feels like it got an errata. Is that what it feels like to you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a rules errata, essentially.
Sure, yeah, it is.
But it has nothing to do with Urza's Saga. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, it was done to make it so that Tashana's Tidebinder couldn't kill people's summons in standard and have a lot of feel-bads, right? I mean, don't we think that's sort of the net of what's going on here?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't know if they thought of the implications, but yeah, they did definitely mention in the article it was because they're introducing Saga creatures in standard. Yeah.
They don't care about us, Devon, when they make these rule changes. Rule changes are
true.
It's the playground of where of Modern's, like, you know, we're shooting edge cases in Modern a lot, and knowing the rules well and understanding the advantage that happens with this change is that they didn't do this thinking about Urza's Saga at all. I don't think. Well, let's talk about, so what is it? Can we give the quick version, Stan?
Yes.
The TLDR.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the letter of the law. All right, and the copy that went with the rules change is actually pretty brief, so I'm just going to read it out loud and we'll then dissect it. With the advent of Saga creatures, it's much easier to get into a situation where a Saga on the battlefield loses all of its abilities, but is still a Saga enchantment. The result of this interaction was previously unintuitive to many players. Since that Saga had no chapter abilities, the game defined the, quote, greatest number among chapter abilities as 0, and no matter how many lore counters that Saga had on it, it would be sacrificed as a state-based action once it wasn't the source of a chapter ability on the stack, which is usually read away. I can understand why that might be unintuitive to new players. Right?
For sure.
Like, your Saga loses all of its abilities, therefore it needs to go. Like, that's a little bit confusing if you don't like understand some of the intricacies of state-based abilities and layers.
Especially because it still has the counters on it, right? And from a newer player perspective, they're thinking to themselves, well, it has counters. Why does it, why would it die? It still clearly has, you know what I mean? So,
right. And starting with the release of Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy, we, Wizards of the Coast, are updating the rules. If a Saga has no chapter abilities, it won't be the subject to the state-based action that would cause it to be sacrificed due to how many lore counters it has. Similarly, it won't be subject to the turn-based action that adds a lore counter to each Saga you control at the beginning of your first main phase each turn. So, long story short, all this really does is it kind of freezes a Saga with the abilities it has based on how many lore counters it has. But it removes that line of text that says if the Saga has no abilities, then it needs to be sacrificed.
I really hope that's correct. Is that correct?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
It is. Yeah, and as Dave mentioned, I think a big sort of driving force with this change is the introduction of creatures that also happen to be Sagas, and, another card that Dave brought up, Tishana's Tidebinder, which is a huge fixture in Standard. Almost if almost every single blue deck has Tidebinder. And I can understand from their perspective, a newer player comes in, they play their Summon Titan or whatever, and it gets Tishana's Tidebinder, and they put it, their opponent's like, hey, that goes to the graveyard. And so I get it. I understand it from that perspective.
Yeah. So let's talk about Modern.
Right.
Urza Saga, Blood Moon. I think at this point, that's not only a very familiar interaction, it's probably the single most popular interaction that we have with a Saga card in Modern. I'm struggling to think of, other than Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
Yeah, those are the two playable ones, right?
And we're not really messing with Fable of the Mirror Breaker consistently.
No.
We can be, though.
You can, I guess if you Tishana's Tidebinder Chapter 2,
yeah.
If you Tishana's Tidebinder, who's playing Tidebinder in Modern? But I guess if you did that, it would just, never tick up again.
RIP Rhinos.
Right. Yeah. So this change allows Urza Saga to be activated and its abilities to be used, even with Blood Moon on the battlefield, which was previously impossible.
Right.
Okay. But this is only possible if it earned those abilities before the Blood Moon entered play. And a really important caveat of a very specific rule, 714.3a of the rules manual, that did not get updated text. So what that means is if an Urza Saga enters the battlefield when a Blood Moon is in play, it actually still gets that first lore counter, but it does not have any chapter abilities. So when the Blood Moon, say, gets removed, even though that Urza Saga that entered after the Blood Moon has a lore counter on it, it cannot still tap for colorless because the ability that gives it the tap for colorless is a state-based action that is what the Blood Moon is now erasing.
The important part there, though, it still is a land that taps for mana that stays in the battlefield, and that's huge.
Yes, it is a basic mountain saga.
With one lore counter on it with no ability.
That does nothing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most importantly, there's no immediate sacrifice. Saga would be sacrificed as soon as it lost all of its chapter abilities, and now it just remains on the battlefield, as we've said. But the lore counter delay is really important because Sagas don't gain lore counters at the start of each of their controllers' pre-combat main phase while they lack chapter abilities. However, they keep any lore counters that they had and the effects that those lore counters may have provided for them. So what this means in practice is, let's say your Urza Saga taps for colorless, and then someone played a Blood Moon. It can continue to tap for colorless, and it can continue to tap for red because it's now a mountain. Similarly, if it had the second chapter, pay 2, tap, make a construct, it gets to keep that ability as well.
For forever?
And it never dies.
Yes. Or until the Blood Moon is removed and it has to be sacrificed to its own abilities.
Oh, yeah. Are you just hearing this for the first time?
No, I'm just giving a good reaction for the podcast for those who haven't heard this before.
You know what, though? This news broke right before Indy.
That was my reaction.
I heard it and I was like, I'm just not thinking about this right now. This is happening with Final Fantasy. This is not my problem. And people kept talking about it, but because I was giving everyone the silent treatment, I was just not participating in the hot goss of the weekend. And I was able to mostly save all of my reactions until we recorded this episode.
Well, and that's good too, because you were playing an indie and you were playing Blood Moon in your deck. So if you're thinking about that, then if that's like in the back of your mind and maybe it comes up in a situation where your opponent has Saga and you have a Blood Moon, it's like, do I even want to play this? Because their Saga's going to stay on the battlefield.
Yeah.
That's
I think
funny.
The big second order question from this, with Saga staying on the battlefield with 2 lore counters, is does this open the door for deck building in Modern?
Yes.
And I've seen a couple different
so.
takes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if
this.
that means somebody has figured it out already, but for sure this seems like an exploitable thing that you can consider in a line, and it might make certain decks a little better than they were before.
Yeah, so we've got 2 decks we can talk about. The first one is one that you shared, Devon, which is Mono Red Prison by Arcbound Poppy.
Where is Zach Coolhand? That's no, this is his deck, 100% from back in the day. Ragavan, Bone Crusher Giant. Okay, those cards didn't exist when he was still playing.
Chandra, Torch of Defiance.
Karn the Great Creator. Those did.
Yeah.
Lightning Bolt, Desperate Ritual, Pyretic Ritual, Chalice of the Void, Pithing Needle, Relic of Progenitus, Shadow Spear. Those are your Saga targets. Ensnaring Bridge, you know that was around. 4 Blood Moon, 3 Fable of the Mirror Breaker. If you want to, for some reason, pause your Fable from going forward as well. Oh, wait, that wouldn't happen with Blood Moon. It's because it's not a land.
Not a land.
So that doesn't work.
If you turn it into a land somehow.
Wow. And then Gemstone Caverns, Urza Saga. So, this deck, we haven't talked about a deck like this in a long time. Here's what this deck can do that is shocking to people, is that it does all these weird things, but the thing that's really broken with these decks is a broken start for this deck is double Ritual into turn 1 Chandra or turn 1 Karn can be good and interesting out of this deck. And double Saga, turn one Ritual is what I mean. Double Ritual into Chandra off of Gemstone Caverns and Modern. Sorry for the confusion there. Gets you a 4-drop on turn 1. You can also do Cavern Mountain Ritual Chalice of the Void for 1 on turn 1, which is daggers to many decks in Modern, especially before they get a chance to literally do anything.
Good luck, Prowess.
Good luck, Prowess in particular, but there are a few other ones that really hurts as well, or it's just a giant pain.
Right, but I mean that's a 3-card combo. So like,
but this is like the top end of that deck, right? But what you are doing, you're right, is playing like a control game, prison, lock them out for a longer game. But it'll surprise you with those fast openers sometimes.
I think what's really interesting to me about this rules change is that a deck like this previously, A, did not have access to the toolbox aspect of Urza Saga because of the rules interaction, and B, maybe if you look at the threats, there's not a ton of threats here. So once you have Blood Moon Saga, you just have an endless amount of threats where you're not going to run out of gas. You have that toolbox aspect of like all these different lock pieces like Needle, Relic against certain decks. I mean, I don't know if Prison's back in the menu, but this deck certainly got a huge boost.
Yeah. I did misspeak a second ago too, where I said that you don't need a Ritual to play a turn 1 Chalice. You just need Gemstone Caverns and Ruins or in a Mountain. So fun deck.
So that's one deck. Our friend Andrea Mangucci posted another.
Oh, no way. Okay.
That he also, I think, is already trophied with, and that's Is It Saga Wizards? Now, this is a Tamio Emery deck, but it's also playing a couple main deck Harbinger of the Seas. David Harbinger of the Seas.
Yeah.
Plus, we have like Baubles and opals and ambers.
And Corey Steel Cutter. So this is
got
Cutter.
a couple
This
Corey
is
Steel
Cutter
Cutter,
Affinity plus Saga, plus this Saga Harbinger package, kind of.
Yep.
Right. And I think the goal here again is like you can either lock someone out with Harbinger of the Seas, or if you're really cheeky, you can time an Urza Saga where you get one of them on chapter 2 and then play the Harbinger, and you're just making card instructs for the rest of the game.
I mean,
Looks good.
we did it, fam. You know, like, I mean, this is. Wouldn't this be fascinating if this was the Mox Opal deck that was amazing? Right? Like the one, like there are a lot of good ones. If this was suddenly the one that really breaks it, where it's like, oh, you have this line to disrupt their mana, but also be able to make tokens over and over again forever. I mean, this is cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, the final verdict is I feel like this change is understandable. It's certainly a sea change because it's just kind of completely changed the way we've been playing one of the most iconic cards in the format of recent history, coupled with the most iconic cards of the format from 8th edition.
Yeah.
Right?
Both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, new and old. They're coming at us from both sides. And change can be hard to get used to, but I think this is one that ultimately makes sense if the main goal is to reduce confusion for new players, discovering that this card type like has this funky interaction. I dare to say that the change is slightly more intuitive. And I think when we first learned many moons ago that Blood Moon just makes an Urza Saga like blow up, like that took our brain to twist in a specific way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like this kind of just makes sense. Like, yeah, it's a land. It just becomes a non-basic mountain. And the fact that it has those abilities added to them, like that's where you get into the complicated understanding of like layers and state-based effects and yada, yada, yada that ends up making Urza Saga even better than it already was.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard some people kind of discuss, like, does this make Saga too powerful in terms of, like, are enough people going to be abusing this? And I think at the end of the day, it's cool that this opens up this sort of new deck building puzzle where you can, you know, sort of include a Saga package with your Blood Moon. But, I mean, Blood Moon stonks were not necessarily on the rise anyways in the first place. Like, I think a lot of the Boros decks, and maybe Stan can attest to this, were shaving on Blood Moon anyways. So it's cool that it sort of, in a weird way, makes Blood Moon better because you can put Blood Moon in your Saga decks, but it also makes Blood Moon worse against the other Saga decks. So it kind of does like a little bit of both at once, which I find kind of interesting.
How much worse do we really think it is against Saga?
Well, a lot worse. Because you can't cast, like if you have a Blood Moon and they have a Saga on 2, you can't cast it.
True, but that's only one turn.
Yeah,
right.
But you have to wait a whole turn, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there is also a lot of value in just stone raining them and like taking them off like
one mana,
a land for turn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's probably the harder part of it is the stone rain being missing. Cause yeah, you do have to play around the chapter 2 problem, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like it gets that much better against Blood Moon to me, but maybe it does mostly, I think, because of what Stan was saying.
Well, it gets better insofar as that you get to keep your material.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and it's no longer just a blowout.
Right.
Where it used to be sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, what's funny to me, just like sort of like this sort of direct implication. I know a lot of Amulet players typically sideboard out some number of Sagas against Blood Moon, but now they're maybe just incentivized to keep all of them in. And before this whole like Saga plan, making constructs wasn't that good in Amulet. But if they play a Blood Moon and you just have a Saga on 2 for the remainder of the game, then your constructs are a lot better now. You know what I mean?
Sure. You get a lot more chances to do it. That's for sure.
Yes.
I don't know. I think these are two cards that were always going to be confusing with each other. And now they're just confusing in a different way than they were before. There's different edge cases than there were before. And that's Magic, baby.
Hey, and you know what? If Saga becomes a problem,
they can always
we'll
ban
just
Blood
get rid
Moon.
of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, or finally ban Blood Moon.
I didn't realize that Saga, according to Goldfish anyway, is $50 a piece right now.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Glad I got those a while ago, I guess.
Jinkies.
Yeah, we're back.
All right, so that was a lively conversation about Urza Saga.
We can love to just talk about rules. We can talk about rules for 25 minutes.
That's the new podcast topic.
Yeah, just rules. Just pick your favorite part of the comprehensive rule set and just talk about it.
We are a bit pressed for time, so I don't think we can get into all of the picks to click we had for Final Fantasy, but there were a couple cards here that we did not talk about 2 weeks ago when we first talked about Final Fantasy spoilers.
Yes.
So how about we wrap this episode with just a quick picks to click into some of our new friends from the wide world of Final Fantasy 9 and one of the other games. I don't know.
Yes. First one that we need to talk about. People wrote in about this.
Did they really?
That we didn't talk about it before. Vivi.
Spotify comments?
Vivi.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it was spoiled when we first recorded.
It was. We just forgot about it.
Oh, okay.
Truthfully.
Weird. I feel like I would not have missed it because I'm looking at Vivi or Natir, and I'm wondering, like, is this maybe the best card in the set?
Well, it's certainly the most expensive card in the set, is my understanding. Like, I think it is anyway, where it was for a little while. And here's what this card does. It's an 0/3 legendary creature wizard for generic blue-red, Vivi Ornetier. I'm going to say Ornetier, like they're French, with a 0 activated ability that says add X mana in any combination of red and or blue, where X is Vivi Ornetier's power. Activate only during your turn and only once each turn. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Vivi, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Okay.
Wow. It's broken.
So
It's pretty good.
What does this card break? What are we breaking with this card? Because that's a lot of mana, probably, if you can pump it up.
Yeah, very good with cheap and or free spells. So I think the first place that I would necessarily go towards is Mox Opal, Mishra's Bauble, Mox Amber, because it's also a legend for Mox Amber. Mm-hmm. So you can have all those with the Core Steel Cutter, stuff like that. And then you use kind of this. I don't know exactly if you're doing any sort of like what your big mana payoff is. It might just be like some stock ups or something. Mm-hmm. So that could be something. And then it also kind of works well in prowess because it works very well with mutagenic growth, where mutagenic growth gives it +3 because you get the counter and the +2/+2, and then it makes 3 additional mana. So I think those are the two clearest places, at least in my eyes.
Do you play more pump spells in prowess if you're Vivian?
I don't know. Maybe you play some more Phyrexian spells, like you could throw a gut shot or two in there to combine with the growths and the baubles, but
you don't have to play the pump spells because it gets the counters from the non-creature spell triggers. So yeah, you're just going off. Yeah.
I've heard some rumblings about scale up.
Yeah.
So maybe there's like a teamer prowess, or you splash green in prowess for scale up, because scale up is pretty absurd with Vivi.
Yeah, that's or 7. Actually, I guess wild. Make 7.
It's just 1 mana +6 mana or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll say the reason I like this card is because I think it's both a closer and an enabler in the right deck or in different decks, where it essentially turns all of your 1 mana spells into mana neutral spells. And also, I think it lets you perform like mini storms, if not dedicated storm turns, to casually deal like 4 or more points of damage per turn while you're just spinning your wheels. And then you can potentially even attack on top of that.
Yeah.
Even on the turn it comes down. Like, Devon, I think you alluded to this, but if you bank enough 0 mana spells, you play a Vivi, then you play some like baubles and opals, and then you can start just going off with it.
Yeah.
So I think it's like potentially really impressive. And the one thing maybe holding it back is like, or probably not. Like I was going to say like maybe it being a legend holds it back, but
it's a bonus.
It's a bonus for Mox Amber.
Yep.
Do you think there's any chance we get to a place that's like total degenerate combo a la paradoxical outcome or something like that, where we're picking this up and recasting it and activating the mana ability multiple times a turn? Because that seems like, okay, let's really break it.
Okay.
You know, a bunch of 0 mana spells, pick them all up with paradoxical outcome. You know, we're playing, what's that, Defender's Shield or whatever with this?
Yeah.
It's like Mox Amber, Defender's Shield, Mox Opal, baubles, cast them all, pick them up, cast them all, pick them up.
What was that equipment deck?
Yeah.
Cheerios?
Yeah, there's like a Cheerios deck.
Yeah.
Because then you're just doing 4 damage to them. I mean, you're playing your Moxes and hurting them, then casting a spell, you know, activating the ability, casting paradoxical outcome, picking it up, casting it again, dropping all your Cheerios again. You could probably do 8 damage at a crack or 10. I don't know. I feel like
PO draws more zeros and
I just feel like this card to me is like, it looks like it would be a cool thing to help you out in prowess. And on the other, and there's a lot of cards that are powerful that I always think that with prowess, like Underworld Breach. What it really is just a broken combo engine and not going to go into something that's ultimately fair like prowess.
Yeah, I don't know how you like print 0 mana. Like, it's not even a tap
That's
ability.
the thing.
0 mana.
Yes.
Add X
So
mana of
messed
any
up.
combination of red and or blue, and like not ask for that to be broken.
Yeah.
Like this feels like something slipped through the cracks. You know what I mean?
Or it was shoved through the cracks on purpose. Like they were. I mean, that's the
Right.
only reason it gets templated like that. Is, hey guys, we're gonna break this. Are you good with it? Okay.
I hadn't thought about the PO application, but that's got the brain churning.
I mean, don't they play? There's like a PO deck in Vintage, right? We can get somewhere close with this as part of it. What if you cast more than one Vivi a turn, even beyond that? Anyway, so I think that card's clearly good, and people are gonna have a lot of fun with it.
Indeed, indubitably.
The other card that was on your all's list that I thought we should talk about, because I saw people talking about it more on Blue Sky the last week or so, is Joshua, Phoenix's Dominant. Joshua.
Big Josh.
Our favorite character from Final Fantasy 16, Joshua.
They have the best names. So this is
It's got like a young Justin Bieber haircut.
yeah, exactly. This guy definitely clearly is in Phoenix, right? Like he looks very French to me. Joshua.
This guy looks like he was a protege for Usher.
Oh, see, I'm going the other way.
After he was discovered on YouTube.
I'm imagining him as a protege of Air, not. Anyway, so it's a generic a red and a white for a 3/4 legendary creature, human noble wizard. When Joshua enters, discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. Okay, we love putting that ability on red creatures right now. Apparently, we got a lot of options for that. It used to just be Spyro, and then it has an activated ability of 3 generic. Red, white, tap, exile Joshua, then return it to the battlefield, transformed under its owner's control, activate only as a sorcery. People don't seem to think this is going to get used all that much, but I'm going to tell you what Phoenix Warden of Fire is on the back. It is a 4/4 flying lifelink creature Saga Phoenix with the first 2 chapters are Rising Flames. They deal 2 damage to each opponent. And then on the last chapter, the third one, it says Flames of Rebirth, return any number of target creature cards with total mana value 6 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, exile Phoenix, then return it to the battlefield as Joshua. Comes back as Joshua if it doesn't die. Seems unlikely.
Well, you say that, right? But think about a card like Seasoned Pyromancer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in your head, Seasoned Pyromancer, you don't think the 5 mana thing comes up often. Now, it's different
It does,
because if they kill the Pyromancer, you can block with it and it's from your graveyard. But obviously with Joshua, you have to keep it on the battlefield. But I think given the fact that it has 4 toughness, it might, dodge Lightning Bolt and stuff like that. It might come up more often than people think it does.
Yeah. Yeah, I mostly meant getting all the way to chapter 3 of Phoenix Warden of Fire seems somewhat unlikely.
Yeah.
I also think part of the problem with the Phoenix side is that chapter 1 doesn't have haste.
Right.
So it flips over, it deals 2. It has to survive for another turn before it can do up to 6 with the flying lifelink damage.
Also, you have to gain life or have to survive another turn, but it's nice that it has lifelink because then you gain life off the chapters and off the attacks that it manages to put. Hey, two life can mean something. It can mean something. But I think the big thing that people are responding to here is more that it's Spyro that has 4 toughness, which Devon was talking about a minute ago, because it means it blocks a lot better than any of the other options that we had in this slot before, right?
Attacks better too. I mean, I guess it attacks for most of the same amount because Pyromancer does effectively make, 3 power or something. You're discarding 1 spell most of the time.
Yeah.
But it does block a little bit better, yeah.
Yeah, but this is like cute anime boy instead of Spyro, which is like hunky fantasy guy.
Yeah.
It is, I don't know how much this matters, but it is also a white card to pitch to Flage. I don't know if that ever matters, but it's like a pyro that you can pitch, or not Flage, to Solitude.
Solitude.
Sorry. Why did I say Flage?
I was like, where are we going with this?
Flage in the mind.
Yeah.
No.
Zoo in the
It's
mind.
good with Flage.
It is.
Discard Flage to it.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. I think this card, your write-up Stan here says that, or Devon says, thinks it could be a one of, basically like split with these other cards that do this rummaging draw ability, and it's just another piece of the puzzle. I think it's possible it could be. And if there's ever a really important 3 power attacker in Modern, this will be there to kind of block it on the other side where the other ones can't.
Well, Nicodle,
Nicottle's coming back.
Well, exciting times from an exciting set. Maybe this time next week we can talk about some of the first early risers from Final Fantasy, because I believe it's going on Modo
tomorrow.
Nice.
Yep.
And that wraps up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast to get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple or Spotify, please leave us a rating and review. If you'd like to reach out to our podcast, you can email thedivedown@gmail.com or find us on Blue Sky. If you'd like to support our show, find our Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown. Check out our store at thedivedown.com/store. Find Devon on Twitch at twitch.tv/doomwake. The O's are zeros.
I'm always saying it.
It's a fun way to spell the word. I don't know how you came up with that, but I respect it. Check out our sponsors, starting with Heavy Play, to get some incredible deck and dice boxes and playmats featuring their Equip Mag system. Use promo code TheDiveDown2025 for 10% off your first order at heavyplay.com. Shout out to Mana Traders for sponsoring the Dive Down. If you sign up with promo code TheDiveDown, all one word, you'll get 25% cash back after 3 months of a Magic Online rental subscription. And of course, check out our friends at Magic Mind, who's giving you 60% off your first subscription if you use promo code DIVE60. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and play more Urza Saga in your Final Fantasy Modern Day.